Hello everyone, my name is Amanda Ellis and I am going to be doing a video now channeling George Michael. It's the second time that I have channelled George, and it's linked into my work with what I'm calling the Heart Squad, which is a group of souls who are in spirit but who are coming back to try to share some truths with us. And more than anything, I think it's becoming clear, help us to heal different aspects. And often, this is the truth, because I'm a healer myself, what you tend to help other people heal tends to be what you also need to heal. Doesn't mean that they are not healed of these things in spirit. It may have been something that they struggled with their whole life and worked through in life, or it may be that there is still some healing to do. So it's almost as though they're coming back to do the healing with us. That's the way I like to think of it. I did the first George Michael channeling, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. And I was aware that I wanted to bring his energy back. But because there were lots of other things, lots of other subjects of videos to do, I thought it would probably be a few months off. And then last week I channeled Princess Diana again for the second time. And Diana referenced Live Aid, I think it was. But it wasn't just the Live Aid reference. With her energy, I was reminded of her love of popular music. And of all the, I didn't say this on camera, but of the stars that I saw her thinking about when she was talking about that, was George. I've no idea whether Wham did perform at Live Aid. Let's have a look and see whether they did. But it was Princess Diana bringing back George Michael for some reason. Sorry, just my curiosity is killing me now. George Michael and Wham, yeah, they did perform at Live Aid. Ah, okay. I remember watching it live. Anyway. Oh, as did Freddie Mercury. Yeah, Freddie Mercury is, I'm not going to channel him today, but he's sort of been hovering as well, linked into George. It's quite interesting. So Diana's pushed George through again, and we are going to enjoy his company today. Can you see me doing that? I'm just realising I'm doing that, and it's not because I'm stressed or tense. It's actually, I'm linking into George's energy, because one of the photographs that I was just looking at of his was the one that we all know of, Careless Whisper. And in the still from that video, a lot of the famous photographs from that video show him, and he's sort of like clinging onto this rope. It's like he's like clinging onto the rope for dear life. And I was going to print it out, and I asked him about it. I said, why are you I want to ask him, why was he clinging on so tightly? Because it almost feels as though that was almost like a metaphor in that as well, clinging onto the old identity of who he was before he really came out and showed the world who he was. Not just in terms of his sexuality, but also in terms of his music, leaving the sort of boy band era behind and the crooner sort of energy behind, to some of his more mature music that he did in later years, particularly when he referenced politics, because he still feels as though he's got a very political energy. So I've gone out today, I've bought him some flowers. What he really wanted was a lily. I like almost like a white, seems to be very important as a colour. But I couldn't find him any lilies, so I've bought him some white roses for George. So I've got my white roses set up, and I've printed out this photograph is the photograph that I'm looking at. Okay, so when I'm talking to him and asking him questions, this is the image that he wanted to be referenced back to in this video. And it's quite interesting. I have to say that he has been with me as an energy for the last couple of days. Well, to be honest, since I did the Diana video, whenever that was, it was less than a week ago. And when I say he's been driving me crazy, I mean that in a nice way. They're all a bit like that because they all chat to me at times when I haven't got the camera rolling. And it's almost like, hold it, can we say that on camera, please, George? You know, not just when I'm driving my car and I'm at the traffic lights. because I will just tell you a few things that me and him have been chatting about over the last few days. One, he wanted to show himself with this floppy fringe that he used to have in the early 80s. Now, a lot of us had those floppy fringes in the 1980s, but he was very much, this was very much part of his style. And he's joking, and he's sort of saying that he and Diana, Princess Diana, very much shared the same haircut. Okay. He's laughing and saying we went to the same hairdresser. I'm sure they didn't, but it's just it really strikes me that they had very similar hair in the 1980s. Okay, so it's like there's that reference to Diana. Also, when he looked like this in particular in the early 80s, it was when he was very much the person who was on all the teenage walls, okay, particularly teenage girls at that time. And he was never on my wall, and so we were having a bit of a joke about that, because he was saying, yeah, I never made it onto your wall, did I? And he's saying, tell them what George was on your wall, Amanda. So the George that was on my wall was Boy George, okay? So, and again, if you remember, if you were alive, you know, if you lived through that whole era, Wham, Culture Club, there was always a bit of a sort of a playful competitiveness between those two bands, not just those two bands, between a lot of the 80s bands. So he was having a bit of a laugh with me, saying, yeah, you know, I didn't make it onto your wall, you had the other George. So let's bring him in. I have to say, you can see that I'm smiling. He has a lovely energy today. Not that he didn't have a lovely energy last time, but I haven't re-watched the video that I made 6 months ago. I never really do that. So I can't actually remember completely what even was said or what came through. But I do just remember there was a slightly sad energy at that time with him. Probably because, I don't know, maybe the particular subjects that were being discussed. But there was like a lingering sadness that I felt. I don't feel that today. I feel a real lightness and a playfulness with him. So I do feel that there has been more healing that he's been doing the other side of the veil since we last spoke to him. He's feeling lighter, he's feeling more playful, and he's just like a pleasure. Not that he wasn't a pleasure, but he really feels like a pleasure to be with today. So let's bring him back, and we will do what we always do. My guide is Archangel Metatron, who oversees all of my work and who is with us on the earth, and he's also with spirit in other dimensions, many other dimensions. And so we're just going to ask Archangel Metatron to bring George's soul energy back, just to be with us and to talk about whatever he wants to talk about today. And also, I do know there is an aspect of teaching today. He wants to talk about insecurity and looks, and help us heal that, okay? Because that was one of his things in life, and I do think we talked about that last time as well. So anyway, I'm just spraying this. This just helps me to connect. It's called the Rainbow Bridge. And as we always do, just going to ask for the bridge to be built by Metatron here on Earth and in the other realm. And then we are going to, with Metatron's help, invite George to come and be with us for a little bit of time. And as I always visualize and imagine, there is a bench that has been positioned on the brow of the Rainbow Bridge, and it is there that whichever spirit wants to come and talk to us comes. And I'm smiling and I'm laughing because I really can feel Freddie Mercury as well. And Freddie Mercury's even more playful than George today, and it's like he's saying, it's like he's wanting to sprint to the bench first, but it's like he's saying, oh no, I'm only kidding. He's like, I know it's George's turn. So so with that being said, we're just going to let George come over. And I don't know what he looked, I can't remember how he came across last time, but again, I think it's again, I'm seeing cowboy boots again with him. It is very much the 80s George is how he's appearing as he's coming over the bridge. He has got the big floppy fringe, okay? And he's got a slightly, do you mind me saying this, George? Almost a sort of a blouson type effect shirt. So it's billowing, you know, it's like a billowing white shirt. His skin, which is olive colour, is on show here. So he's got a couple of buttons undone. And there is a gold chain around his neck as well. Trousers are nondescript. Nothing really to say about the trousers. He's just got a pair of trousers on. So we're just welcoming him in and just asking him to be with us and thanking him for being with us. So with Metatron present as well, let's just see what he wants to bring through. Princess Diana was the last person to sit on this bench, and she had swept it. I remember her sweeping the bench, and he's almost like saying, oh, this is very nice. You know, it's like, it's nice that she did that. I want to ask you first, George, actually, about your relationship with Princess Diana, because all joking aside about the floppy fringe and the floppy hair and all that, but you did seem to have a particular bond with Diana, didn't you? Would you just like to tell me a little bit about that? And also, it seems to be to me that she's the one that's brought you back to talk to us today. And he's saying, yes, she did. He said, I always would have come back, but Diana has a way of marshalling the troops, is what he's saying, okay? She did that in life, and she's still doing it the other side of the veil, but we all love her dearly, and he's actually saying, I'm honoured to be part of her tribe. And that's a reference to this Heart Squad energy, because Diana was the first one to come in. I think George was the second one, so I think I'm right in saying that, second or third anyway. And it's I'm still feeling, and I think I felt this last time, there's a reverence towards Diana from him, not in a silly way, not in a sycophantical way or anything like that, just in a way that she deserves respect. You know, she deserves respect, and he respected her in life, and he still respects her in death. He also says that they share a wicked sense of humour and a naughty sense of humour, okay? And he was saying some of the things that we might have joked about would have raised a few eyebrows, okay? He is saying that, he's actually saying that Diana is somebody that a lot of gay men gravitate towards, and of course that's not mutually exclusive, you know, it's not just gay men that love Diana, but he's saying that there is something about Diana's energy that is very soothing for men who are gay. Okay, do you want to tell me a little bit about that then? Okay, it's saying it's because she is very accepting of anything, okay, not just in terms of sexuality, but as we have heard from her own lips, you know, in the previous video, it's like Diana doesn't see the differences, is what he's saying. Diana doesn't see the differences between people. She never saw the differences when she was alive, and she still doesn't see them now. And he said, I cottoned on very quickly that she was like that. He's saying that he loved his own mother very, very dearly, but there was, and I know this anyway, he's referencing the fact that being a gay man and coming out very openly would have been very difficult for his mother. Whereas with Diana, although there was this, I want to say this frisson, I almost want to say this, does feel a bit like sexual chemistry between them, actually. Not that it necessarily went anywhere or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but there is an attraction. He's saying, Amanda, keep it respectable. He's saying that there was this attraction. It's a bit like, I mean, if you look at his face there, I haven't got Diana's picture to hand, but there is definitely something Diana-like in the way that he looks, actually. The more that I look at him, I can see Diana's face in him. And it's a bit like sometimes when they say, don't they, that often you will end up with a partner who actually looks quite similar to you in some respect. So obviously they were never going to be together or anything like that, but there does feel as though there was an attraction between the two of them. But it wasn't just that. There was also this very maternal energy that Diana does have, that he also he found very warm and he found very nurturing, and he felt that he could just be himself in her company, basically. So did they both play tennis? He's showing me a tennis. I know Diana liked tennis. I've no idea whether George liked tennis. I'm being shown Wimbledon and tennis. Okay, I'll just say that because it's come through. There's this feeling from him that he would have enjoyed playing tennis. Okay, I don't know whether he ever played tennis, but I'm sensing that there is a side to him that would have enjoyed sports, but I don't feel as though they were sports that were sort of rugby or football. I feel as though it's something with a racket is what I want to say, but it doesn't feel like it's cricket. I want to say tennis for some reason. Okay, so maybe they had a love of tennis, him and Diana. Just feels as though there's something there in that. And something about the white uniform. He's saying we both liked people in white uniforms. And he's being a bit naughty, okay? So tell me a little bit, anything else about Diana? Diana and you, the other side of the veil, George. What goes on there now, okay? Are you you obviously are in contact with each other because she's brought you back. Tell me what goes on the other side of the veil, you and Diana. He's saying, well, it's very easy to connect to her and to be with her. She doesn't have all the formality around her now. He's very sort of like, yeah, we hang out, you know, it's like it's no big deal. And it just feels like they enjoy each other's company, and they definitely feel as though they are from the same tribe. There's also this thing with George. George was a Greek man, and I said in the last Princess Diana video that Diana had a thing for men who were of a different nationality, different upbringing, different culture. It wasn't just in terms of being attracted to them, it was the fact that she genuinely was interested in different cultures. And again, there's something here about George's heritage which seems to link Diana to him as well, okay? Are they both Cancerian? He's showing me what, yeah, I think they are. I know this now, they are. I had to put that 2 and 2 together though then, because he was showing me the sea. He was showing me water, and it led me to think about Cancer. So they're both Cancerian as well. He's saying, talk a little bit about that. He says, you can do that, Amanda. You're one as well. Yes, I am. But I want to hear it from your lips, George. So tell me about what is it about the Cancerian thing? He's saying the world needs more Cancerians. He's saying the world needs that softness that many Cancerians have, and the sensitivity that many Cancerians have. He's saying, of course, it's not exclusively just that sign that has these characteristics, but he's saying that he's talking about leaders on the stage, world leaders. Doesn't just have to be people who are linked into countries, but people who are popular, you know, that we know. He's saying that the traits of a Cancerian are very much in line with the new era that we're moving into. He's saying, don't get them started though, because I'm not just saying it's only Cancerians, but he's talking about it from his perspective. He's saying he just relates to her because they both had that astrological link as well. Okay. Right. Where do we go now, George, then? So why have you come back to speak to us? Does there have to be a reason, he says? No, there doesn't. He's saying, I felt as though I never had the final encore. He said, I feel as though I never had the final encore. It's similar to the energy with Michael Jackson in terms of Jackson was going to do the This Is It concerts, and then of course he died and he never came back in that way. And George Michael, I actually feel as though Princess Diana had been pushing George to get back on stage before he died. I feel that very, very strongly. Not in a really sort of hassly, pushy way, more in a sort of a whispering in the ear, you know, which is what a mother energy does, along the lines of you can do it, you can do it, you've still got it. And it didn't happen. And he's saying, he's talking about the final encore. He would have liked to have been able to have done the final encore, but it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. He's showing me this swan, you know, very sort of gracefully. You know, swans have got very long necks, and it's just like the swan sort of takes a bow. It's very Swan Lake. I know nothing about Swan Lake. I know nothing about the ballet. You'll have to put two and two together with that. For some reason, Swan Lake ballet, that whole thing about the swan gracefully just laying down. Oh, okay, he's bringing in his partner that died, Alcemo. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, George. Alcemo. He's saying that they were true loves, and that's the thing with the swan. So Alcemo had died previously of AIDS, and that was his part. That was his. The thing with swans is that they mate for life, and it's almost like when he left, it was just so devastating. And then I'm just seeing George at the final time when he died. He was the other swan in the pair. The two of them were two swans basically, and so George just took that final bow as the swan. So he's bringing him in there. I don't know whether he wants to talk too much about him right now, because I do know one of the things that he wants to talk about is looks and insecurity, because he'd already warmed me up onto that subject. So George, can we just go back there and talk about that? Talk about insecurity and worrying about what everybody else thinks the whole time. He's saying, I realise now that a lot of my life was worrying about what other people would think. And I think this is particularly family. It's mum and dad over other people. But, you know, mum and dad are the formative energies in all of our lives. So there's this thing about needing to please, which comes through from him, needing to let go of that. What else, George? Let me just see which is the main thing that you want to talk about to us today. What do you think is the thing that we really need to be looking at? We need to be looking at our own individuality, he's saying. The world needs more individuals. The world needs less people who just follow the crowd. He's saying because the crowd are going in the wrong way. So the era of the individual and individuality is increasingly important, and breaking out of the boxes. He's saying that I was talking about this morning. I was talking about it in a different video. Not conforming to what other people expect of you, and being at peace with who you are, how you look, how you operate, how you sound, you know, being at peace with who you are, getting to know yourself. In the car earlier, when I was driving from somewhere, and I knew that I was going to do this video after lunch, he was talking about his teeth. And we were having a bit of a joke about it, to be honest, because I, as a child, had totally buck teeth. And I had all 4 wisdom teeth taken out because I had too many teeth in my mouth. You know, I had a very pronounced, you know, buck teeth, had lots of braces and all the rest of it. And he's saying that he had problems with his teeth as well. And it got us onto a discussion which was about about looks, you know, being comfortable with your looks or not being comfortable with your looks. Maybe it does go back to childhood. Maybe there has been something which has you felt very self-conscious about, whether it's your hair, whether it's your teeth, whether it's your height. He's saying we're all judging ourselves against some standard that somebody else has created in the first place. He says the divine God never wanted that, never wanted us to be looking at each other and judging. He's taking me back to the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, and the fact that Adam and Eve were naked. You know, they were They were blind, actually, not physically blind, but they were blinded to really to each other to a degree, because what he's saying is what they, in their original state before they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden for sin, that's a whole other discussion, the union between them both was based on pure energy. It was based on what they felt with their heart. Adam loved Eve and Eve loved Adam, and there was just this energy that was beautiful. Eve takes the bite of the apple, sees that they're naked, and then everything goes to hell, you know. Maybe wrong choice of word there, hell, but what he's really trying to say is that it's as though from that moment we became conscious of what we look like, you know, whether we're dressed or whether we're undressed. And it's as though we've never healed from that one moment, and we need to heal from it. We need to heal from almost like that original sin moment. That's quite deep, George. He's saying, yes, it is. Okay. Tell me a little bit more then, what you want to bring through for people here about how they feel about themselves. I mean, George is quite forthright. You know that if you followed him in life, he had strong opinions. So there's a strong opinion going to come through now, which might surprise you, because he's actually talking about cosmetic surgery, plastic surgery, when it's done to an extreme. You know, he's talking about very beautiful young girls who look in the mirror and see a defect that isn't even there, okay? And then go and pay to have that, he's doing this, defect corrected, when there's actually nothing wrong with their face to start with. It's one thing when you do something which is completely and utterly not needed, and something else which is, I don't know, correcting a nose or, you know, jawline, or I don't know, there are reasons why cosmetic surgery is needed sometimes and wanted. And he's not saying, you know, don't ever go down that road. He's just saying that it's got out of balance, that he's saying that we're all, and he's saying, I'm a good one to talk, Amanda, because he's saying, I don't know how I would have been as an older man facing the aging process. But he's saying it's different here. It's different the other side of the veil when you look down. And he says, I see some of my fans. I see some of my fans and they're beautiful. He says they're all beautiful, but it's like they're pulling at their faces and they're seeing this and they're seeing that. And it's almost like he wants to get your face, he wants to put his hands in your face and just get you to look at yourself and let you realise that you're actually beautiful as you are. And actually, even if you have got a slight quirk here, or a line here, or a grey hair here, or whatever it is that's going on with your appearance, that it's all fine. Actually, sometimes that's what makes us beautiful. Our little quirks and our little, our things that don't match the stereotypical view of what we're supposed to look like. And so he's saying in some ways it's quite, he says it's interesting to come back to this image. Let me just put my glasses on. Hold on, sorry, I can't see what I'm doing otherwise. He's saying it's interesting to come back to this image. He says, because I didn't look like that at the end. I look very different. He talked about this in video 1. And he's saying, the thing is, I look here now at this image of myself and I can see that I was a good looking man. It was a beautiful face. He said, but I never felt that at the time. I never felt beautiful. I never felt handsome, whatever word you want to use to describe it. He's saying, I look back now and I can see it, but I didn't see it at the time. And he's saying, how many of you are like that? How many of you look back at photographs of yourself 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, and you think, wow, actually quite good then, but you didn't feel it at the time. He's saying, feel it now. Start to feel it now. Start to look in the mirror and like yourself. He's saying, because from that foundation, it brings in other things. You have to, it's about self-love, basically. He's really talking about self-love. It's not about narcissism and looking in the mirror and thinking, wow, aren't I beautiful? It's about looking in the mirror and seeing the divine, is what he's saying. Seeing that we're all meant to be different. We're all meant to look at a certain way and a different way, and that's good. He's saying, I wish I'd got that. But he's saying, I see it now. I really see it now. Okay. Where should we go now then, George? Let's have a look. I want to ask him about his... I want to ask him about what he feels about what's going on here on Earth at the moment. Okay, so present day 2019, where we're at, George. Any guidance that you've got, any observations that you've got? The first thing that he's commenting on is the media, and he's saying I was never a lover really of the media when I was alive anyway, but he's saying it's become even more twisted and manipulated since I left. And he's saying it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand it is so that the media is becoming more toxic, is his word. He was never a lover of it when he was alive. He still isn't now. It's becoming more toxic, but he's saying in a way they're digging their own grave, because people are starting to get tired of the games. And he says more and more people are waking up to wider truths. But he's really shown me the younger generation, and by younger I'm talking under 20. Older teenagers, 15 upwards. That's the generation that he's showing me. And he's saying he's showing me that generation because it's the most immediate generation that's about to come into its power and find its voice. And he's saying that, you know, there is no way that these kids are going to sit down and swallow the tripe, is his word, that is fed to us. And there's a reference there. I know what he's doing. The word tripe. Previous generations used to eat tripe, okay? Certainly in the UK, I think it was quite a cheap... it's a fish, isn't it, tripe? I've never had it. Now, if you serve tripe up, you know, it would be like, what the hell is this? You know, it doesn't go with my, you know, my olives and my hummus. Our tastes become more refined as we evolve. Okay, that's the point he's trying to make. So he's saying that this new generation coming in, it's just like that. He's shown me, like, you know, if they were given one of the papers today, which a lot of us still read and we take in as fact, it would just be like, it's just like, what the hell is this? Straight into the bin. So he's saying, have faith. Gotta have faith. Have faith, because change is coming. Change is coming. And the grip, the vice-like grip that the media has over us at the moment, which is that most people do still believe what they read in the paper. A lot of, and you know, might not be you, it's not me, and it probably isn't you that's watching this, but a lot of people out there just believe what they read in the paper. They believe, you know, that it's fact. He's saying those days are going to end, and he's saying it's not as far off as you think it is. It can't come soon enough for him. He's saying I need to let go still of a bit of the anger that he still feels towards certain editors. He's saying if Diana has been able to do it, I should be able to do it. He's saying Princess Diana reached a place very early on where she was able to forgive the paparazzi, forgive the newspapers that printed so much. He's saying she also realised that she had played a part in that as well and forgave herself. He's saying I'm still working on it. I don't know, there just is this love-hate relationship with the media and him. And he's still quite stridently anti it. What about social media then, George, and YouTube and all these other ways now that we communicate increasingly, versus the old days of reading what's in the New York Times or the Daily Mail or whatever your paper is that you read around the world. He's saying what needs to happen is that the consciousness of the people that have got the big channels out there needs to either raise, or for the right people to be in the right jobs. He's saying it's exactly the right thing, because otherwise you just leap from the frying pan into the fire. So you go from a place of not believing, you know, what's in the paper, you bin that, but then you start looking at other channels online, whether it's on YouTube or anywhere else, and believing what somebody else is saying. And he's saying, but the same rules still apply. Does it resonate? Does it feel like truth? So there's like a word of caution there. I want to go back to the question that I had previously, George, in terms of how you're spending your time now. Okay, what you're actually doing, what you're doing. Are you still looking out for us here on Earth? Of course, he says, of course I am. He's very concerned about, he's taking me straight away to Greece. And he's taking me to the financial issues in that part of the world. Was he a Greek Cypriot? Let me just look it up. I've just got my phone here. I want to make sure I'm on the right, I'm going down the right avenue here. So George Michael, because he's showing me Athens. He came from a Greek Orthodox family. Okay. I don't know where his actual family were from. He's showing me Greece anyway, and he's showing me that part of the world. And he's reminding us that Greece was the cradle, it's one of the places which is the cradle of civilization. The great art and the great culture and the great philosophies and the great thinking that came out of that part of the world. And he's saying he keeps an eye on that part of the world, basically. And I think it's probably tied into finances and the financial problems that are there with inflation and high unemployment. So he's very aware of what's going on in that part of the world. He says, I always have my eye on America. Tight-lipped on that for the time being. Won't get myself into trouble there, he says. What else? More than politics, what he wants, because he's talked about politics when he was alive and the war and all that type of stuff. He's actually leading me more down the environmental line. And I tell you what's quite interesting. Before I came to do this video, I was eating my lunch, and I just put George Michael. I was actually checking to see whether, when he was talking about his teeth, buck teeth or something with his teeth, I thought, is that true, you know? Because I always like to know that I've definitely got them here before I come on and do a video. It's just part of my confidence as well. And so I came across this article which just confirmed that, yeah, he had problems with his teeth. And then for some reason, it then started to play a video of 5 minutes worth of Desert Island Discs. So Desert Island Discs is a radio show that has been run in this country for decades. And it took me to an interview that George had done with Kirsty Young. And it was only literally like 4 or 5 minutes worth of it. I've never heard this video before in my life, so I know George wanted me to see it. And in this little clip, he was talking about a head injury that he sustained when he was about 8, okay? I didn't know that had happened, but he talks to Kirsty about receiving a head injury when he was about 8. And what was really interesting was he said before the accident, he had been very interested in wildlife. You know, as a little boy, he would go into the forest and he'd be obsessed with animals, with insects, with birds, okay? And then it was almost like after the injury, he had almost like a personality change. So that was quite interesting. I might ask him about that in a moment. But what is also interesting is that today, the energy of Chris Packham came through. And Chris Packham, for those of you that don't know, is a UK broadcaster who is, I don't know, he's in his 40s or 50s, and he specialises in wildlife documentaries. He's an extraordinary man, and a few years ago, no, not a few years ago, sorry, less than a year ago, he suddenly announced that he was quite severely autistic. And everyone was like, whoa, never knew that about Chris, because he just comes across, you know, you can't see it on the documentaries. And ever since then, he's been on my radar as somebody who's really interesting because A, he's a conservationist, he's an animal lover, he's also got this autism, but he's also really going places. In the news in the last few weeks, Chris Packham has been facing an onslaught of hate because I think he might have banned, whether it was hunters from some grounds or something near him, something like that. Anyway, he's had like dead birds sort of attached to his gate, where people who feel that they should be able just to hunt and roam are really pissed off, basically, because Chris is standing up for the animals. And George feels as though he's really behind Chris Packham, okay? As mad as that sounds, I'm putting the two together because it's like, it's not George as the, you know, the 80s superstar. It's George as the young boy, pre-8, who understood the wonder of animals. I'm not saying he didn't feel that when he was older as well, but George is taking me back to that time when he was smaller, where it's like he really got it in terms of how amazing everything is, from the tiniest little insect to a bug to a beautiful bird of prey. And it's like somebody like Chris Packham is like the modern day hero, basically, who's standing up for wildlife and who's getting hammered from it, from certain quarters of, you know, people who are just very close-minded. That's the type of thing. George would be in there like a shot. So I really feel that his focus would have become more, when I say environmental, I'm wanting to put a clause around that, because what I'm not sensing him being as, I don't know, on a Greenpeace ship necessarily. It's more, it's in terms of the animals, it's in terms of wildlife, it's in terms of, I mean, it is nature. I know it's all nature, but it just feels as though it's something to do with, it's very elemental. It's something to do with the forest. It's something to do with animals. I'm just going to ask him about that. Am I right here, George? Speak to me. What is this thing here I'm tuning into with you? Yes, because everything is important, he is saying. Everything is important. Every living being on this planet is important. And he's saying, I can see clearly now, Amanda, in spirit, those animals who have actually got their hand in the air and who are asking for help. And I'm actually feeling a real outpouring from his heart to some of the endangered animals in the world. I don't know whether this is anything that he actually got involved in when he was alive, but I definitely feel it's something that in death he feels very passionate about. He feels very passionate about the natural kingdom. And he's saying not that it's going to happen yet, Amanda, because it'll be a very, very sad day when this happens. So I'm not predicting anything here. It's more that George is just saying at some point there will be the most beautiful place in heaven for David. And he means David Attenborough, who is just the most beautiful man, who has, you know, stood up for the animals for years. He's saying David is part of the Heart Squad. Of course he is. Of course he is. Oh gosh, yes. Thank you, George, for that. I hadn't put two and two together with that. He's making me see that now. That makes me feel quite emotional. That makes me feel quite emotional. Why does that make me feel emotional? I don't know. I've always respected David Attenborough. It just does. It just does. Okay, David. He's saying, let's talk about some of the living Heart Squad. Okay, let's talk about some of the living Heart Squad. Because he's saying there's a lot of focus on us who are the other side of the veil. You know, myself and Freddie and Diana and all the rest of them. And there's more to come. He's saying there's a lot that, you know, are still alive. And he's saying it's important that you honour those that are still alive and who are still down there battling and who need your support sometimes, who need your support. So David is one. We know that Elton John is one because Diana's always talking about Elton John. So Elton John. Can you give me any other names, George? So Heart Squad that are alive. Heart Squad that are alive. He's straight away wanting to take it away from the famous people. Not that there aren't famous people that are Heart Squad members. He's shown me doctors and nurses. It's also a reference to the doctors and nurses who helped him through his life, who also helped his partner Alcemo when he was dying. He's saying, I saw many earth angels within the medical establishment. And he said they get a really bad rap and they are neglected. And he's saying you need to get behind them more. I'm feeling that very strongly. Heart Squad. He's taking it away from music and he's taking it into the realm of people who write. And he's giving me the name J.K. Rowling. I have to confess, I have never read a single J.K. Rowling book. But he's giving me her name. Why are you giving me her name? She brings magic alive, he's saying. She brings magic alive. And she brings magic alive to children, and she helps children to keep magic alive for longer in a society that drums out of them as soon as possible that magic does not exist. And he's saying not only does she do that for children, she does that to ignite people's inner children, so that they too remember their love of magic. And he's saying it's good that those books were put onto the big screen, the Harry Potter books he's talking about. And he's saying that more people can therefore see them. So he's giving me her name. Okay, he's giving me her name. Okay, I'm not going to go into her energy because I don't feel I have permission to even do that right now. But he's telling me her. Okay. Right, I'm going to do something now, George. I'm going to pull a card, and these cards have just got a couple of words on, and I'm going to ask you to talk to me about it. So the deck of cards that I've got is from Denise Jarvie. It's called The Secret Language of Light. Somebody gifted them to me recently, and look, they've got beautiful images on them. Okay, so I'm going to pull one, and I'm going to ask you just to expand on it. Is that all right? He's saying, yeah, sure. Let's give it a go. He's very laid back. He's got one leg. What do men do this? You know, they sit like that with like one leg like that. He's like that. Chewing something, and I was thinking, what's he chewing? Because it looked like tobacco, and I thought, surely it can't be tobacco. I don't think it is tobacco. It's like, no, it's not tobacco. It's a root. He's saying it doesn't exist on Earth. Okay. It's just like he's very laid back. I'm just seeing me, it's like slouched like that with one leg. It's just like, that's the sort of pose. That's how I'm seeing him. Waiting for the card. Okay, right, talk to us about, if you would please, George, if you want to. Let's see what we're going to get. Talk to us about insight. Okay, talk to us about insight. He's saying, okay, Let's see where we're going to go with this. So insight. He's saying you're asking me for insight. For example, in terms of what is it like the other side of the veil. And he's saying you've all forgotten that you've been there. He's saying we've all been there before, many times. And he said we've all known each other many times, usually as well. And he's saying these great insights that people clamour for in life, he's saying really it's to do with just re-remembering what we already know. Becoming light, basically. The image here on the card, which is the card of insight, shows somebody surrounded by white light. And I know he wrote a song, didn't he, called White Light. Do you want to talk a little bit about that song then, White Light? Which I know was based on almost like a near-death experience. He's saying when you see the light, everything transforms. And he's saying you don't have to wait for that at death. You can see the light at any time in life. All you have to do is ask. All you have to do is keep yourself as clear as you possibly can. The light is available for everybody, for you are light. He's saying, I always believed this. But again, this was another thing that I found quite hard to talk about, because it isn't the type of way that people would expect me to talk. People always expected me to talk about certain subjects. And I always got asked the same questions. So how refreshing is it to be able to talk about something like light to you all as light workers? You understand the term. You understand that we all are light. You are light and you return to light. And that you can see the light at any time because it is within you. And you can see who is of the light through their eyes. Look at his eyes. You see his eyes? They're really clear. Really, really clear. Beautiful light coming from his eyes. He's reminding me, now he was never on my wall, okay? But most of you probably have had somebody on your wall, you know, as a teenager. Did you ever have an image on your wall where the eyes followed you around the room? I did. Mine was David Essex, actually. I had a picture of David Essex. He's laughing now. He was saying he had good hair too. Yeah, he did. And David Essex's eyes used to follow me around the room. But in all seriousness, there's something in that, because actually he's talking about the light. He's saying that a lot of people who are chosen by the consciousness to become successful within the music industry, by essence of being able to succeed, they have a great deal of light within them. He's saying that's not one-upmanship. Everybody has that within them. But he says to be able to really succeed, you've got to believe in your own light. And you've got to shine it. He's saying nobody is going to hear you if you play your music in a cupboard with closed doors. He's saying you have to shine your light. You have to show who you are. It comes out of your eyes, comes out of your voice, comes out of your whole being. And he's saying, of course, sometimes our light can shine too brightly, and then others try to shut us down. But he's saying, what are you saying there? Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because George, unlike some of the other members of the Heart Squad, I feel it was more of a natural death. I mean, it's certainly reported that it was a natural death. Okay, he's not saying to me that he was killed or anything like that, but he's saying that it was almost like a slow death in some ways, that his fights with the music industry had worn him down. And so it was almost like a slow death, you know? Nobody came in and gave him an overdose of pills or anything like that. But it was more that his deteriorating state of being towards the end was due in part to the battles that he'd fought when he was alive. And it was to do with the fact that his light was so bright, as is true for many of them. He's not saying that, I'm saying it for him. But, you know, it's like his light was so bright, they tried to bring it down. And so you had quite a lot of strength of character there, George, to stay with it and to fight it to a degree. What was it like fighting the I was about to say the powers that be, but somebody told me off for that recently, and I think it's a very valid point. We shouldn't say the powers that be, we should say the powers that were. He's chuckling, he's saying I like it. But in all seriousness, those battles that you had with record companies and, you know, fighting for your identity and the soul, fighting, almost like fighting for the soul of your music, your brand, your essence. Can you tell me anything about that? He's saying, yeah, it was horrific. It was horrific. I felt so trapped. He's saying, again, Diana and I share this. He's saying, I know she's told you that she felt like a trapped, wounded animal. He's saying, I felt the same. In a different respect, I felt the same. He's saying it's awful to feel trapped. But it is what it was, or it was what it was. What did you learn from that? He's saying, yes, I learnt from that, in terms of my own strength of character to be able to break free. But he's saying, what I also hope I did was demonstrate to other people that whoever you are and whoever owns you, you know, whether it be a record company or, you know, the local shop that you work at, that you always have a say in terms of who you are and what you want to do. And okay, hold on a minute, he's going off into two different places, because he's talking about breaking free of contracts, and that can apply to all sorts of situations in life. He's saying, if you've signed a contract and it no longer works and it's null and void for all sorts of different reasons, they haven't kept to their side of the bargain, or, you know, things have happened to make it null and void, he's saying you have a right to rip it up. I think he's talking more about relationships here. But go back a step, George, because you were also just saying something about that there were, oh, okay, yeah, he's saying the fact that he tried to break free from the record company's demands. He also wanted to show other artists that they could do that. And he's saying, and quite a few of us tried to do that, okay? He's talking about the Heart Squad here. Quite a few of us tried to do that, bringing in the energy of Michael Jackson in particular, and Prince and George Michael, those three in particular. It's as though they all stood up to the record companies. And George feels as though he was one of the real early ones who like waved the flag and just said, no, this doesn't work for me anymore. You know, and he's saying he hopes that he set an example that it is possible, and that in the future it won't be as difficult for people to be manipulated into very long-standing contracts that they cannot break out of and no longer fits them or their energy, or, you know, it's like you're not allowed to evolve. He's saying that was what really, he's saying that's what really pissed me off. He's saying I wasn't allowed to evolve with it. He's saying life is about evolution. You have to allow an artist to evolve. That's all I wanted. Okay, I'm going to take a 10-minute break to get a cup of tea, and I'll be back. I'm going to have a cup of tea with George on the bench. Bye. Hello, got my cup of tea. I'm actually going to have to probably leave it there in a moment because I've just realised the time. I'm off to the opticians. And I've actually done a few videos today, and I'm getting a little bit tired. So I'm just going to see if there's anything else that George wants to say before we leave, and we will meet him again another time, I'm sure. So let's just see. Anything else for now, George? He's making me laugh. He's showing me Princess Diana again, and it's how she was when I last said goodbye to her in my last video, which was she's just really excited about this new baby, and he's saying, I've got to go back to Diana, you know, I've just got to go and try and calm her down a bit. It's all said in jest, okay? It's all said in jest. It's just great friendship there. But it's almost like, you know, he's giving me this impression that he's got stuff to be going back to. So we're not going to keep him for much longer. There's just this enormous feeling of love that he has for his fans, and for anybody that wants to connect into him. And he's, what I think the overall message from this video from him, I think what he's trying to convey through me is that he really wants to help people who are doubting and who are feeling insecure about how they look. And that being a barrier to anything, to be honest. Not being happy with how they look, not being happy with who they are, wanting to give more self-confidence, help people with self-confidence issues, self-acceptance issues, and self-worth issues as well. And these seem to be topics that he'll want to come back and explore again with us, but it just feels as though it's really clear that that's what he wants to talk about today. You know, I even noticed just now, because, you know, I'm getting tired, and it's like I looked at myself in the camera and thought, my God, I look white, you know, I look like I'm about to pass out, I'm so pale. It's probably just the lighting, but even in that moment, I could hear George saying, give yourself a break, you know, love your colour. You know, don't need to go and start putting, you know, fake tan all over yourself or anything. That's just a comment for me. Nothing, no judgment on anybody else that does anything like that, okay? My daughter does it. She's always covered in fake tan. So, but it's more to do with, you know, there's nothing wrong with your colour. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with the fact that you've worn glasses today because your eyes are tired, you know? It's like, be comfortable with who you are. Be comfortable with how you look in any one moment, because that actually says something about how you feel about yourself, whether you accept yourself. You know, it's that whole thing really, isn't it, about accepting yourself, warts and all. And I just feel that that's his message here, and to be true to who we are. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm going to thank him very much for coming again, and he's making me laugh because he stood up. He stood up from that bench, and you remember how I described him at the start with the trousers and the blouson type blouse? He's got a pair of tennis shorts on, and it's he's just in a rather jokey mood. Okay, so he's got his tennis shorts on, and it's like he's going back over there. It's very early 1980s energy. That's how he's showing me himself today. It's that energy from Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. It's that type of thing, okay? And he just feels really good today. He feels like he's in a really good space, very happy, and wanting that to be infectious, basically. Wanting that to be infectious so that we start to feel better about ourselves. So with Archangel Metatron present, I'm just going to ask Metatron just to escort George back. My pleasure. And just say thank you to George for being with us. Thank you. He's saying my pleasure. He's very polite. He's very, very polite. He's saying my pleasure. And then he's putting out his hand just to, and he's off. Okay. Yeah, okay, he's gone. All right, so let's just put our roots down into Mother Earth. Feel the earth beneath your feet. And give thanks to Gaia, give thanks to Mother Earth for bringing these amazing people into our consciousness. You know, these souls that gravitate to Earth, who bring their music, who bring their dance, who bring their written words, who bring their inventions, who bring their joy, who bring their sensitivity. You know, it's just a beautiful place to be, this planet. And as George reminded us as well, there's also still an awful lot of amazing people all still here, and you're probably one of them. Okay, so sending you lots of love. I'm now going to have my cup of tea, and I'm going to take a quick little 5 minutes rest, and then I'm going to get on with my day. Lots of love to you all. Bye-bye for now. Bye. George will be back, I'm sure, another time.